All right, welcome in, everybody. We're about to start another very productive week. And now stuff is finally starting to ramp up as far as the 49ers offseason goes. The update for you is that phase one of the offseason program begins today. Now, I've already done some reporting on this last week after the interview with Brock Purdy. I reported, along with Matt Barrows, that Brock Purdy will be attending the 49ers offseason program. This was on Friday, and that offseason program begins today. We have another piece of news, and that is that Jauan Jennings has signed his exclusive rights free agent tender. Now, the 49ers had offered Jennings this tender a little bit more than a month ago. This was near the start of free agency. I think right before then is when they offered it. And Jauan Jennings essentially had no choice but to sign this. The alternative was to not play football in the NFL in 2023. Any player with only those 3 years of accrued service time is only going to be eligible to be, or actually it's only 2+ accrued years of service time for Jauan Jennings because he was a practice squatter in that first year in 2020. A player whose contract expires with only that little service time is only going to be eligible for an exclusive rights free agent tender. And that means that if the 49ers tender a player with an ERFA tag, and that's what they did to Jauan Jennings, he can only negotiate with them. And that means he has no leverage to negotiate. So the price for Jauan Jennings this year was the minimum salary for players of his experience level, and that is $940,000. Next season, Jauan Jennings is slated to become a restricted free agent, in which case the 49ers would have to tender him more money or allow him to negotiate with other teams. But this year, there was no wiggle room. It was just a matter of when Jauan Jennings would sign. Well, the when is today, so that way he can participate in the 49ers offseason program. So the 49ers have themselves an efficient number 3 receiver, a good blocker, obviously. I think a linchpin of their physical style. They have him for a very, very economical rate of $940,000, and that is now official as Jauan Jennings has signed that ERFA tender. So the 49ers doing good, efficient, economical business at the wide receiver position. They're going to have to potentially think of how much they want to pay Jauan Jennings next season, but that's a problem that they don't have to confront quite yet. But as an RFA restricted free agent next season, Jauan Jennings will indeed be in line for more money. And the season following that, unrestricted free agent. So you go exclusive rights free agent to restricted free agent to unrestricted free agent. Well, then that's when Jauan Jennings would be in line to earn a much bigger contract. But that's neither here nor there at this moment. Right now, we're talking about the 49ers offseason program, which begins today. I mentioned phase one. Let me explain what the phases of the offseason program are so you can brace yourselves for the next month and a half or so. Phase one, only meetings, workouts, and rehab are allowed. So workouts in the weight room, workouts just doing sprints, whatever. You can't do any team drills, and you can't do any actual on-field instruction with coaches. The coaches can communicate with the players in meetings. So that's why for this guy right here, Brock Purdy, it's big to be there in person with Kyle Shanahan, Brian Griese, and the 49ers offensive staff, because they could start looking at tape in meetings. They could start identifying the missed reads that Brock Purdy had late last season. Remember, there was some issue about the first reads that he was missing. He was making plays a little bit too complicated. That's the kind of stuff that the 49ers are attacking with Brock Purdy. He obviously wouldn't be able to participate in on-field stuff right now since he's still rehabbing, but he can do the meeting portion of all of this, and so can the 49ers other players. This limited portion of the offseason program lasts for 2 weeks. 2 weeks from now, phase 2 will begin. That is when individual and group work on the field with coaches is allowed, but team drills aren't. By team drills, I mean 11-on-11 football. So this is a 3-week stretch, phase 2 is. So in 2 weeks from now, the 49ers will embark on a 3-week stretch where they can start, doing offensive drills, defensive drills, a lot of stuff on the field. They just can't put it all together into team drills. Team drills can happen once full OTAs start. Those happen after phase 2. They're in phase 3. OTAs are going to be a 4-week-long stretch, and that's if the 49ers decide to utilize all 4 weeks. They're capped off by a mandatory veteran minicamp. Last season, the 49ers cut OTAs short, moved the veteran minicamp up 1 week. They might do the same thing this year, but there's no telling if that's going to be the case. The mandatory veteran minicamp is currently slated for mid-June. We are in mid-April. So over the course of about the next 2 months, you're going to see phase 1 happen, phase 2 happen, and phase 3 happen, with exact dates still be determined. The next date on the 49ers calendar is Monday. The following Monday from now, April 24th, John Lynch is going to have his pre-draft press conference. That's going to be in the middle, of course, of phase 1. Players going through meetings, workouts, and rehab. So that's what's going on for the 49ers. They have inked Jauan Jennings. If you want to take a look at the 49ers 90-man roster, I will be happy to oblige you right now. Here's a look at that roster. If you remember a little bit earlier on, I had Jauan Jennings highlighted in yellow because he still needed to sign that ERFA tender. He is no longer highlighted in yellow or gold, or whatever color you want to call it, because he signed the ERFA tender. So the 49ers now officially have 66 players under contract, 24 slots left for the 49ers. They did add Kerry Hyder last Friday. I know I already spoke of that in a video and on tweets, but if you want to see Kerry Hyder's name on the depth chart, it's right here. That's a deep defensive line now for the 49ers. The 24 spots they still have to fill, well, you're going to see those filled through the draft weekend or through some bargain bin free agent signing before then. The 49ers currently, we had already accounted for Jauan Jennings in our cap projections. They currently have a couple $1 million in cap space. It'll only cost about $1 million to sign this draft class against the top 51 rule. So 24 spots left on the 90-man roster for the 49ers, and obviously Brock Purdy is in attendance. We talked about this. This is significant. If Brock Purdy had any early hiccups in his rehab, he probably would be staying behind in Arizona to work with the specialist, Keith Coker, who's a big-time baseball physical therapist who rehabs a lot of these elbow injuries. But everything going according to schedule so far for Brock Purdy. We talked to him about it on Friday, and because of that, the 49ers have him coming to Santa Clara for phase 1 of the offseason program, where he's going to be able to meet with Kyle Shanahan, work on some stuff. All right, why don't we open it up to a little bit of a 49ers Q&A before I move on with the rest of my day. Yes, Jalen Hurts, $255 million, $51 million per year, up to $54 million per year if some not likely to be earned incentives are included. That is an NFL record. Hurts becomes only the second player in NFL history to average over $50 million a year. Aaron Rodgers was the first, and that contract right now, well, the Green Bay Packers still own it. The New York Jets trying to acquire it, but we're still waiting. That seems the next round of deadline pressure for that, maybe the only round of deadline pressure for that this offseason, is going to be next week at the NFL draft. I don't know if we're going to have much access during phase 1. This is where we focus more on the draft than anything else during phase 1 of the offseason program. So we'll be focused on John Lynch, Kyle Shanahan, and the new players they bring in. Then we'll have a lot of rookie interviews, and then the actual 49ers media availability for current players. That's more of a phase 3 thing during OTAs. It's all kind of staggered out neatly like that. Now we focus on the draft, then we focus on the veterans later on in May, moving into June. I'm going to address some of these rumors, and I'll probably do them in a separate video in a more concise way. But I mean, right now, rumors are ridiculous because they're not based on any sort of fact. The Purdy might sit out rumors are based on an article that was not very well written, that had a quote presented without any context. And let me tell you what, I interviewed Brock Purdy myself on Friday, and he said that everything, like, I could tell you straight from the horse's mouth right now, I can tell you exactly how the interview went, what Brock was talking about, how the rehab is going according to him. And just because there was an interview somewhere else that was vaguely quoted, it wasn't even a conclusive quote about him not being sure about something, that doesn't cancel out what I'm telling you straight from the horse's mouth regarding Brock Purdy. And that is that the start of his rehab has gone well. That's all that you need to know. The next inflection point for everybody is going to be early June, when Purdy is supposed to start throwing. But so far, everything's proceeding according to plan, and that plan is for Brock Purdy to return early in the season. Can things take twists and turns? Of course they can. But we'd go crazy if we went down every single rabbit hole and every single tweet that's blown way out of proportion. And this current one, I'll explain it in another video this afternoon, so you could tune in for that. This current one is absolutely ridiculous. It is people looking for clicks. I don't even blame the writer of the article. I don't think it was well worded. We'll put it that way. But I blame the people taking and aggregating it on Twitter and acting like they found something when they really didn't. That's really just the problem of the modern social media climate. You think that Kyle's going to draft another running back, huh? I think they're at least going to add one in undrafted free agency. I mean, they have 24 spots open right now for crying out loud. So they're probably going to add a running back with one of those 24 spots. Kyle Shanahan doesn't even know who will be alive this weekend. That's true. The alive quote that we're coming up on the 2-year anniversary of the Kyle Shanahan doesn't know who's going to be alive quote. So that's going to be on Monday. Yeah, that was the pre-draft presser 2021. Now we're in 2023. So good point by Mike. I love it. All right. Any more questions? Black Razor thinks that Colton McKivitz is going to have a big year. He might have to have a big year. You know, the 49ers did lose mid-tier depth, but that's the point of losing mid-tier depth and not overpaying for it. You believe that you could replenish it through free agency, the lower levels of free agency, and the NFL draft. So wait to see how the 49ers draft, because they didn't let players go that they thought would be irreplaceable. Let's put it that way. The 49ers fully believe that the players they let go would be replaceable because that's their franchise building strategy. If they think somebody's irreplaceable, they pay them. They twist and turn around the cap to make sure those players fit in. And the way that they're able to have enough money to allow those players to fit in is because they don't overpay the players who they think are replaceable. So I think it's as simple as that. That's exactly what Navarre says here. We have to trust the new guys will step up just like Talanoa Hufanga did this last year, according to him. The salary cap as of today, well, I could give it to you right now. Let's look it up. I think it's around 3 million. I have not been looking at the salary cap all weekend. So since you asked so nicely, I'm looking right now. Yep, 3 million. Because Jauan Jennings was already included in the projections because everybody knew he was going to make $940,000 this year as soon as he signed. So it's still about 3 million. Now, I'm waiting to see Kerry Hyder's numbers. That might actually bring the number a little bit lower. Hyder's contract is not yet in the database. So we're going to find out a little bit later. Hyder played at 1.5 million last year, but even if he plays at 1.5 again, which I don't think he will, I think it's going to be a little bit less. That's not going to be the ultimate bite out of the cap because of the top 51 rule. There's going to be displacement. At most, I think Kerry Hyder is going to cost the 49ers $500,000. So you'll say about 2.5 million after we account for him. They still do have a lot of belief in Drake Jackson. They think he has a lot of talent. He just needs to get a little physically stronger. It's going to be a big offseason. It is a big offseason for him right now. And then it needs to be a big turnaround into year 2. And in year 2, if he can showcase some of the explosiveness and the bend that he showed early on in year 1, but translate that over the course of a full season with more strength and endurance, well, then Drake Jackson can be a player for the 49ers, and that'd be the type of player that they really need. Out of the 217 people or 220 people watching right now, how many are subscribed? It's a good question. If you're subscribed, you could comment in the chat section that you are. If you're not, then you better hit the subscribe button right now and then comment in the chat section that you did subscribe. Unique One says, the 49ers make players better. Look what happens with most who leave and how far they go. So you're saying that guys get worse when they leave? I mean, the 49ers have a good development program. It shows they're developing head coaches who also, in turn, develop players. So, yes, the 49ers have a good system going. And that's why they have that whole A-list, B-list plan with which players they retain, which players they re-sign, because they trust their system to develop some of that filler talent. You can't re-sign the whole team year after year. The goal is to be successful enough so that your B-listers sign for more money elsewhere. That's part of the plan. Then you replenish. And you only replenish successfully if your coaching staff develops successfully. Ebell, subscribe. Thanks, man. B-listers are comp picks. Yes, that's a good way to put it. Some thoughts on other players, other Fresno State prospects. I like Jalen Cropper. He was a good player. They also had Jordan Mims at the pro day. And one more Fresno State guy. I can't remember off the top. Oh, Nico Remigio. They had Nico Remigio there. Remigio played for Cal and was a really good returner for both Cal and Fresno State. Probably more of a slot weapon at the NFL with his size, but good short area quickness from somebody like Nico Remigio. Also a pretty magnetic personality. I remember interviewing him back when he was at Cal. Obviously, though, Haener impresses me a lot. I mean, I think he impresses the 49ers too. The toughness is there. The coachability is there. I think that there's some lightning in that arm. I think some of the anticipatory throws from Jake Haener are really nice. We'll see how long he stays available. He thinks third to fifth round. If that's the case, maybe the 49ers go for it. They also seem to be maybe erring more toward the end of the draft for the QB position. I think they're going to add one, but I'm not so sure they're going to be using a higher pick on it. I think they want to bolster the room at good value, and that's what they should be doing. I'm moderately surprised the Robbie Gould situation hasn't moved along, but I will say that again, these things operate on deadline pressure, and the next inflection point of deadline pressure for Robbie Gould is the NFL draft, because that's when teams are going to have to decide whether or not they're actually picking a kicker, using valuable capital on a kicker. And if you use valuable capital on the kicker, you're probably not going to be entertaining Robbie Gould on your roster. So the 49ers, right now, they don't have anything committed to Zane Gonzalez. They could back out of that completely by just cutting him. They even get their conditional pick swap back at that point. Nothing is guaranteed there. They could still re-sign Robbie Gould and everything will be fine and dandy, how it was before, except under a new contract. But once they decide to, potentially, I should say, if they do decide to draft a kicker, well, at that point, you're investing into two different kickers if you also re-sign Robbie Gould. And I don't think they're going to be investing into two separate kickers with guaranteed capital. Did the 49ers sign Chris Conley, Mike? I have to look at Twitter. Somebody's saying they signed Chris Conley. That'll mean they worked out Chris Conley, the veteran wide receiver, last week. So I'm going to go to Twitter really quick, see what the latest news is here. So the 49ers did sign Chris Conley. All right. Let's get that. Is that Rap Sheet? Is that Ian Rappaport? Let's check it out. It is. All right. Let's make a text title. Boom. Let's get Chris Conley's Pro Football Reference page up, and let's talk about the 49ers' new addition. All right, here we go. Chris Conley, veteran wide receiver. They go for the 30-year-old. All right, so the 49ers have signed veteran wide receiver Chris Conley. He's a 30-year-old, been in the league for a while, former third-round draft pick. It had been expected that they would add a veteran wide receiver. At this time last season, the 49ers added Marcus Johnson, another vet from Kyle Shanahan's alma mater of Texas. Well, this time around, just to fill out the offseason roster, they've got Conley aboard. Now, a lot of people were speculating after Conley had visited the 49ers on Friday, and the 49ers had also looked at Laquan Treadwell. A lot of people online were very foolishly speculating that this meant that the 49ers were up to something crazy in the wide receiver room. It does not mean that. guys, please act like you know how NFL offseason works. If you don't know how it works, I'll explain. You have a 90-man roster. You need to run workouts. You need to go through phase 1, phase 2, phase 3 of OTAs. I've talked about all 3 so far on this show. And to do that, you need bodies at every single position. You also want to sign bodies who you think might help you down the road, potentially through the practice squad or through very low-level depth. Not every single signing means that you're going to trade Brandon Ayuk. Chris Conley is one such signing that is just a lower tier signing, somebody who's been on practice squads here in the recent past, somebody who's 30 years old, but somebody who gives the 49ers a potentially dependable veteran body who can learn the playbook quickly and maybe even contribute on scout team moving forward. This is how NFL roster construction works, and we can take a look at Chris Conley up on the screen right now. That's him. 3rd round pick in 2015. He's played for the Chiefs. He's played for the Jaguars. He's played for the Texans. Back again with the Chiefs practice squad in 2022 and with the Titans last season. 6'3", 205, sturdy frame for Chris Conley, and he holds the NFL combine record for the highest vertical leap ever, 45 inches. That's cool. I like that about Chris Conley. That's a nice little fun fact. So he's an athlete. And he's an athlete who's a little bit older now. And it's not only about being an athlete, but the 49ers can work with this. They can work with the strength. They can work with the explosiveness. And they're happy to have Chris Conley on their 90-man roster for probably something near the league minimum. I'm guessing it's going to be right near that. It's a 1-year deal. He had previously started with the Chiefs. He's been with all the teams I just listed, and now the 49ers bolster their roster just a little bit. So let's take a look at it right here. Let's slot where Chris Conley fits in. Look at the wide receiver room for the 49ers. Can make this a little bit bigger for you. There you go. Here's the wide receiver room highlighted. Chris Conley, we'll put him, we're just going to make this nice and even. We'll put him in this slot spot. I think the receivers are fairly interchangeable. They can line up at different positions. I know that at the top, you want Jauan Jennings to be your big slot. You look at Ray McLeod as a gadget weapon. But Chris Conley is now one of 9 receivers on the 49ers active roster. So anyway, they have a new player in tow for phase 1 of OTAs. That, by the way, is 67 players under contract, so 23 spots left. We had breaking news here over the course of the show. All right, I'm going to get to Twitter. I'm going to have a video on Brock Purdy a little bit, maybe a dedicated video on Chris Conley. We'll get through all of this news, but glad that we're able to cover whatever we went through today on this show as phase 1 of OTAs has begun. So the 49ers are moving forward. Everybody take care.